Hello, I'm Sean, and today we're going to be going through the University of Wisconsin Fencing Club Toolbox to look at all the different stuff you can use, and then it's useful to have for armory purposes. So starting up in one of the side pockets here, we've got a bunch of jigs, I guess is what they're called, for wiring a blade. You have one end that goes through the tang of the blade and the other end that goes into the barrel. And these are pretty easy to make. You can look it up online. And when I eventually do a video on wiring a blade, you'll get to see them in use. But we have a couple of those and some assorted rope that I've never used. Getting into the body of the toolbox, there's just junk in here, so I'm not going to bother looking at that. Getting into the body of the toolbox, we've got a whole bunch of stuff. We've got shoe glue. This is great for dealing with masks when the rubber starts to come up on the side, or if a foil bib starts to come up. We'll shoe glue it. Have a 9-volt battery. They get used in test kits and remotes for the box. 2 pairs of vice grips that get used for a whole lot of stuff, working with 2-prong sockets whenever you have to screw on a barrel, and just basically anything you could figure out a use for a vice grips for. Pliers and an adjustable wrench for similar uses. And assortment of Sharpies, again, for whenever you need them. Have some electrical tape for body cords and taping practice sabers into electrical sabers. A number of Allen wrenches that may or may not be appropriate size, but a few of them at least work for tightening down nuts. We have a wrench for outside hex as well as the Allen wrenches. And we have all sorts of super glue for wiring blades. It works best to use a thin super glue, so that way it will run down the blade as opposed to gel. I've tried gel, it doesn't work very well. So a lot of that. This is a little mini screwdriver set. If I can get the top off, which I can, you'll see there are a lot of really small screwdrivers. This is useful for tip screws, and there's also a Phillips head one that'll get used for body cords and other stuff. It's always good to have a screwdriver on hand. Have some Loctite thread locker, which I'll use when I'm putting a barrel on a blade, so that way you don't have the barrel coming loose, because that can cause your weapon to fail when you take it onto the strip. So a little bit of that. One note, make sure you get the blue Loctite. That is the removable thread locker. They also make a red Loctite that is not removable. And yeah, you'll have a bad time if you use red Loctite and try and get your barrel back. This is just a stamp that we used for mask check. A mask punch that delivers, I forget exactly what the force number is, but the specified amount of force to make sure the mask doesn't break. Have a very large screwdriver that's useful for nuts inside the grip that are just slotted, and also sometimes for working with 2-prong sockets, because the socket seems to be just a little bit wider than a regular screwdriver. So that's nice to have. Generic flathead screwdrivers. Have a wire strippers, wire cutters, which is very useful whenever you're working with wire, obviously. Assorted pens and pencils. A broken 2-prong socket that is useless. I don't know why that's in there. A couple other small screwdrivers that can be used with tip screws. And a tip setter with an epee end and a foil end. Very important for wiring blades. And a saw blade that looks like it's not for a hacksaw, like a reciprocating saw or something. I don't know, but it's a saw blade. We go into the bottom of the toolbox. We've got a Scotch-Brite, which is good for taking rust off of a blade. That way you don't leave marks on your opponent's jackets and lanais. Tip tape for foils, and just regular blue masking tape, good for whatever you need it for. Got some acetone for stripping wires and cleaning out tips and barrels. A rasp for metal stuff. I've never used it, but it's good to have. Got a lighter that's good for burning off insulation whenever you're wiring a blade. I believe this is a foil weight. I don't know why we just have a generic foil weight. This is a little Phillips head screwdriver that should be in the top, not in the bottom. We've got a little tackle box for foil, and we've got assorted wires, some practice tips, screws, tips, barrels, springs, barrels. We've got one of these so this is a foil one. We've got a miscellaneous one that has a bunch of random parts. So we've got nuts for blades. So we've got an outside hex and inside hex. This one looks like it's kind of shot. Lots of spaghetti wires and body cord pieces, especially little retainer clips for the absolute style clamshell ones, and assorted parts and screws for that. More parts and screws, and a lot of washers for using as spacers, and a couple plastic pieces that look like they came from a 2-prong socket. And I don't remember what these are. I think they have to do with the reels. Lots of random stuff in the miscellaneous box. And we have an epee box. Got some barrels, lots and lots of tip screws. Can never have too many epee tip screws. Practice tips, regular tips, return springs, and some contact springs in here. Got wires, more contact springs, some assorted lay-on Paul epee tip assemblies, and more contact springs and return springs. One thing to note with lay-on Paul tip parts is their tip screws are a little bit bigger than the regular epee tip screws, so you can use them on a regular tip, but they'll widen out the holes enough that you can't use regular tip screws with them. So it's good to keep the lay-on Paul stuff just completely separate because it's not compatible. And here we have a test kit. So we've got a little test box. We've got the foil weight and the little epee add-on weight. Got shims, more shims, lay-on Paul shims. They're a little weird, but they work. Got that. We've got Q-tips, which are good for applying acetone when you're stripping a blade or dewiring. We've got a couple little, I don't know what this is because it's in German, but it's a universal cleaner according to the box, and it's something you use to strip rust off a blade. So we've got a couple of those. This one's actually a hacksaw blade used for mostly for cutting the tang on a blade if it's set up for a French grip and you want to put a pistol or an orthopedic grip on it. More Allen wrenches that we never use. Have a magnetizer if you want to magnetize a screwdriver or something like that. It's sitting in the bottom there. We have a tape measure, non-retractable, and looking a little worse for the wear. And we've got a whole bunch of body cord clamshells. They could be clamshells either way. And a linch pin, and what looks kind of like keys to a lock I don't have. So yeah, that's what we have in the toolbox. There are a couple other nice things to have. A good pocket knife is always a good thing to have with you. Just in general, and you can do a lot with a multi-tool as well, but it's nice to have a knife for stripping wires. And it's also a good idea to have a multimeter of some sort because you can use the resistance measurement to check if there's a circuit somewhere, and that is a little bit more versatile than a test kit if it's not quite as easy to work with. It's a good way of making sure that you've stripped a wire well enough, and you can use it to check other things that are a little more complicated to check with a body cord. So those are also good things to have that we don't have in the toolbox, but I personally have. So that's a good start to Armory. You can get a lot more specific tools but you can also get by on a lot less. It's just a matter of personal preference and what you're comfortable working with. So that's what we have. Thanks for watching.